Hi, thank you for joining me. My name is Sarah Hall. I am known as the Wealthy Optimist, and I'm going to be your coach. I am the author of Positive Power, 12 Steps to Mastering Your Mindset, and I could not be more excited to welcome you here today, to begin your course, to begin your journey, to come with me and hold hands with me as I help you to create a life that is beyond your wildest dreams. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background about who I am, how I'm going to be able to help you, how I developed this course, how I developed these steps inside of the program, and what it's done for my own life and how it'll be able to transform your life as well. So come with me as I introduce you to the 12 steps in the program and give you a little bit of background about myself. So I am Canadian. I was born in Vancouver BC, and I was actually born right in Vancouver at St. Paul's Hospital, which is the same hospital that my dad was born in. And I come from a family of four brothers and sisters, and my parents, my mom and my dad, and I'm like the middle child. So I had an older sister, and then me, and then my younger brother, and then my younger sister. And unfortunately, a couple of years ago, my older sister passed away, and she passed away from a drug overdose. And it was an incredibly horrific and difficult thing to deal with and to learn how to cope with, and the grief that comes alongside losing somebody that you care about that much in a completely unexpected way. We had no warning that this was going to happen. She was just kind of ripped from our lives, and to learn how to cope with that grief and to continue to live a life of meaning and purpose and to be able to help others and share my heart with people has been something that has enabled me to inspire other people, because I've taken what happened and I've turned it into something that I can help other people get through. And so that's one of the ways that I'm going to be helping you today and throughout the next 8 weeks of this course. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I had a fairly happy childhood when I was younger, but when I was about 9 years old, my parents got divorced, and they had a really awful marriage. I mean, they were really wrong for each other, and they had a very abusive relationship. And growing up in the house with them while they were going through all of that and then going through the divorce, I watched it all happen, and it gave me a lot of childhood trauma. And I had to kind of suppress that as well too, because my parents were going through their own stuff, and so they weren't able to help me cope with it, and I'm not sure if they even knew how to help me cope with it. And this happens a lot for people when they have childhood trauma. It's not like my parents are to blame, but they didn't know what they were doing, and they didn't know the impact that it had on me and my brothers and my sister, my brother and my sisters. So they weren't able to really help me get through that or teach me coping mechanisms. So what it did was it created in myself at a very young age a lot of post-traumatic stress, a lot of anxiety. I grew up a very anxious, very worried, very nervous, very vulnerable and naive child. And I brought that with me into my teenage years. And because I saw my parents' relationship fall apart, and because I saw the way that they treated each other, there was a lot of anger and hurt, and they put us in the middle of things. They were very volatile and abusive, and they didn't treat each other well at all. And because I saw that, and I went through that, and I had this underlying sense as well of abandonment, and like a lot of kids when they go through a divorce, they feel like it's almost somehow their fault, like they're not good enough, or why couldn't my parents have stayed together? Is it something to do with me? Is there something wrong with me? And I brought all those feelings with me into my teenage years. And in my teenage years, I ended up going from somebody who was really creative and imaginative, and even though I had the anxiety, I was super imaginative. I love reading. I've been writing journals and writing fan fiction and stories since I was a kid. I mean, I have all my diaries I've ever written, but I have my first diary that I started writing when I was 5 years old, and I still have that. And those things mean a lot to me, but it also shows me as well too the things that I went through over all of that time period. And I went from somebody who was very, I don't want to say nerdy, but very, you know, creative and free thinking, to somebody who was really troubled. And I had a very difficult teenage life, and I went from having a good group of friends who did a lot of, you know, normal, happy type teenage things, to wanting to be involved in a different kind of group of friends, wanting to be accepted into something. And I ended up, as such, getting involved with people who were criminals, who were using drugs, who were partying, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing when I was, you know, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And unfortunately, it caused a lot more trauma and a lot more stress in my life. I got into my first abusive relationship when I was 15 years old. I was raped when I was 15 and a half. And that really traumatized me. And something that traumatized me even more in regards to that was the fact that when I went to tell my mom about it, she didn't do anything to help me. It was almost as though she didn't believe me, or as though it was my fault or something. And that kind of stuff really, it sticks with you, you know? And I think those are just a couple of the things. So I got into my first abusive relationship when I was 15. And it was emotionally and physically abusive. So he, you know, forced me to do things I wasn't ready to do. He was very violent, very volatile. It was awful. It was an awful relationship. And that was my first real relationship that I had ever been in. So I started to learn this kind of trauma response, you know, like I started to almost like think that that was normal. And some of the things that went along with that was because of the dynamic of my parents' relationship. Now that I've grown up and I've learned psychology and I've learned all of these different techniques and steps I'm going to teach you through this course, I've learned that childhood trauma from the divorce taught me that relationship was normal. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to be loved properly. I didn't know that there was a right way and a wrong way to be loved. And I just kind of was so desperate for somebody to just love me and keep me and protect me that I put up with really horrible, horrible things from somebody that was not a good person. And I got into, so after that happened, I mean, this is just so you get to know me on like a very personal level. I got expelled from my high school. Somebody did something really awful to me, and that abusive relationship that I was in, he went and he attacked that guy, and it got me thrown out of school, even though I didn't do it. They just, you know, blamed me for it because I brought my boyfriend into the situation when he shouldn't. He wasn't in high school with us, so he shouldn't have been doing that kind of stuff. But anyways, I got expelled from high school, and it seems like a different lifetime, you know what I mean? But so I got expelled from high school, and I had to go to like a reform school. And in this reform school, the second I walked in there, I mean, I didn't belong. I didn't belong there. I didn't even belong. I shouldn't have even been hanging out with these people in the first place, but the last thing that I should be doing is going to some special school for people who are like in juvenile detention or criminals and drug addicts, and just awful people went there. And the principal of that school, he immediately told me, "You don't belong here. I'm going to get you back into your regular high school as quickly as possible." And I was really appreciative of that. And he worked really hard with me over that just one semester that I went to that school to get me back into high school on time so that I could graduate with my colleagues, I wanted to say, with my classmates on time. So I graduated in 2006, and that was kind of a turning point where I wanted to get away from the kind of people that I had been hanging out with, but I wasn't at a stage yet where I was confident enough in myself, and I was still very vulnerable, and I was still very anxious and very wanting to be just loved and accepted, even though I was getting it from the wrong people. So I got involved in another relationship with somebody who was very wrong for me, and we were young, and he wasn't a bad person. We just were very polar opposites, and I wanted a lot of different stuff in life than he did, and we ended up dating on and off for several years. And in that relationship, I started to grow into myself a little bit more. I got older. You know, I met him when I was about 18, I think, and we dated until I was about 24. I had one incident happen in between that relationship when me and him broke up. And when we broke up, I actually dated somebody for just a couple of months who was a really bad person. Like, he was really an awful human being. I mean, he got me involved in some stuff that I won't talk about, but it involved me struggling really badly with addiction. And I had kind of struggled on and off with addiction in the past because I had been in a couple of car accidents, and one of the car accidents, I actually broke my head through a passenger window. It was a head-on collision. Our cars connected like this, they connected like that, and then they spun, and ours went and hit a storefront. And they had to cut me out of that car with the jaws of life. It was a really bad car accident. And after the car accident, they gave me Oxycontin, which is a painkiller. And at the time I needed it because I was in a lot of pain. They thought my neck was broken. Thank God my neck wasn't broken, but I had so much whiplash, so much pain, so much injury from that. I actually couldn't lie down flat in bed. I had to sleep sitting up on a couch for like at least over a month because the movement of getting up out of the bed was so painful for my neck that I couldn't actually lie down. So, and I was in a wheelchair for a couple of weeks as well too. It was really bad. But yeah, I became addicted to Oxycontin, and this is a really bad painkiller. So I've struggled on and off with addiction in that sense. And when me and my ex broke up, I met this guy and I started dating him, and I started using, you know, pharmaceuticals again. And it was a dark 3 months. He was incredibly abusive, probably the most abusive person I've ever dated in my life. He was very violent. He would threaten me with knives. He would punch me in the face. He was a horrible human being. It was really awful. And even though it was only a couple of months, it doesn't take long for an abusive relationship to get really out of control. If that person wants to hurt you, they will. And I was kind of kidding myself. And I had to break free from that person, and I did. And when I broke free from them, they owed me some money, and I moved out, and I moved into my own apartment, and I was happy to get away from them. And they called me one day, and they said that they had the money that they owed me. And so I made the mistake of giving them my new address, and he came over, and I let him in, and he ended up violently assaulting me. He actually broke my nose, and I had a fractured tailbone. He attacked me in the living room of my house, and I woke up on the floor. And when I woke up on the floor, there was blood all over the apartment and all over me, and I didn't know what had happened. I had been knocked unconscious, and my front door was open, and he wasn't around. So I really quickly thought, I need to call the police. Like, what if he comes back? And I ran into my bedroom, and almost as soon as I shut the bedroom door and locked it, he was coming back into the house, and he started pounding on the door, and he was actually breaking my door down. It was one of those like kind of plywood doors in houses in Canada, and he was actually breaking a hole through the door to get to me because it was locked. It was horrific. The worst part of it was that it was a basement suite, you know, so you have like a house that's split in half, and in the bottom half is a basement suite, and there were bars on the window in my room so that nobody could break in, but I needed to break out because somebody was trying to kill me. So I had to find in this daze and panic. I had to find the key to open the window lock, because there was like a little deadbolt on the window. I had to find it, which was in my jewelry box, open that, climb out the window, and I ran to the neighbor's house, who was having a house party at the time, who I started banging on the door, and they called an ambulance and the police, and they set my nose in the house, and it was just an awful experience, a really, really traumatic experience. And the police found him wandering the streets in his socks that had my blood soaked in them, and he had a knife on him. So they said that thank God I made it out of the house, that he probably would have killed me, and they arrested him and he went to prison. I was supposed to go to court and testify against him, but he pled guilty, so I didn't have to testify. I didn't have to see him or anything, because I guess he knew what he did. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if his lawyer told him just plead guilty, you're never gonna get out of this, or what, but that was it was a really awful dark few months in my life. And that started to transform my mindset, in the sense, like, I had always been the person that I am now. I had always been this positive, trusting person. I've always been like a happy person, but I just had been going through so many hurt and so much pain that I didn't know what to do with my life anymore. You know, I had lost direction. I had been hurt so many times. I was just kind of accepting love from anybody who would give it to me, instead of giving that love to myself first and loving myself. And I missed a part in the story, which actually might make a little bit more sense as to why I got into a relationship with somebody that was that violent. My grandma, she died. She actually killed herself with a drug overdose. And I was 17 years old when that happened, and it was very awful. I love my grandma so much, and we were very close. I would take her grocery shopping. She was like an overweight. She was overweight and had like a lot of problems with her stomach and stomach ulcers, and she also used painkillers and medication like that as well too, which she also had onset dementia. So my mom's always kind of said that, you know, it was an accidental overdose. I'm not very sure. She was very unhappy. She was in a lot of pain. I think that she put an end to her misery. And so when I was dealing with that, it was very difficult as well. And it took me years to kind of process that and get over that. Now, something else that happened, I'm not sure which one of all of these things that you're going to relate to, but another thing that happened is my step uncle. So my mom is remarried. She remarried, I think, 16 years ago. They've been married for a really long time. She remarried to a really nice guy, and unfortunately his brother is not a really nice guy. His brother groomed me from when I was younger, as a teenager, being the, you know, cool uncle who would bring us, you know, alcohol, have like secrets with us, you know, sneak around with us, which at the time I thought was really cool, because, you know, I was kind of like feeling like I wanted to rebel against my mom, or rebel against the world, because you're a teenager, and, you know, having a cool uncle who brings you alcohol and wants to hang out with you, or like gives you cigarettes or something, you know, it seems like it's cool. But I didn't know at the time that he was grooming me. And he ended up, several years later, when I was an adult, when I had broken up with my ex and we were on the break, so in between me breaking up with my long-term ex that I dated for 6 years, and before this man who violently assaulted me, it was Christmas Day, and my step uncle got me really, really drunk. We drank together, and we were actually at his mom's house, like with my whole family. And he ended up coming on to me. He ended up being really like forceful and aggressive, and obviously like sexual. And so he ended up forcing me to do things that I didn't want to do, and creating like, it's sexual abuse, and you have a hard time to process when something like that happens to you. you almost make excuses for it because you feel like you've done something wrong. And I had to process that and keep that as a secret for like a decade. It took me until 2 years ago to finally tell my mom what happened. I kept it as a secret, and I let him have this power over my life because I felt like I had done something wrong by even somehow like allowing myself to be in that situation. And now I want to be an advocate for women to speak out and to not allow abusers to have power over you. And so that happened, which is also majorly traumatic. And then I went on another spiral. I started, drinking a lot. I started, habitually using pharmaceuticals again. And I was coping with it in a very terrible way. And I ended up going into rehab, a detox center. So not a rehabilitation, but detox center for a week. So that I was just done with everything. I didn't want to, after that man attacked me, the man I was dating for 3 months after he attacked me, I didn't want to live that life anymore. I didn't want to be around anybody like that anymore. I wanted to cut out everybody in my life. I didn't want to see another bad person again. I didn't want to ever see my step uncle again. And I just was done with it, and I wanted to just have a healthy, happy life. So I went to a detox center, and I got some help, and I got counseling as well too for the physical abuse that I went through from that man who assaulted me and tried to kill me. And sometimes I have nervous laughter. I don't know if you're ever recounting something that was horrific that happened to you and you can't help but like feel like it didn't happen to you. Like disassociation, that happens to me even still, because the things that I'm telling you right now are horrific. And it sometimes feels like it was like a different person it happened to because of where my life is now. And that's why I'm excited to share this course with you, because I've gone from somebody who went through all this shit that I'm telling you about, and I've now completely transformed my life. I've gotten rid of and gotten a hold of addiction. So no longer using these types of pharmaceuticals ever for a really long time. I've also completely transformed my life. I make incredible income. I moved from Canada to London. I live in London now. I did this all by myself. I'm actually on track now to get my citizenship here in another country. I've completely transformed my life. This is the 3rd book I've written, and 3rd book that's published. And to be able to go from something, not even just one thing, but like a series of horrific events, all that adversity, all of those struggles, from sexual abuse, from childhood trauma, from emotional abuse, physical abuse, horribly abusive relationships with some very violent individuals, and to transform your life to a place where you are proud of it, where you are in control of your anxiety, where you are able to accept and transform accept your past, forgive people, and forgive yourself for being in those situations, or for almost like, it's like you hurt yourself even though you didn't do it to yourself. And I'm gonna teach you how to work through that. And I hope that by me sharing these very personal things with you, that you're gonna see that I'm somebody that you can trust. I'm somebody that you can relate to. I'm somebody that will really be able to work with you and help you, because I've experienced it all. My older sister was also a drug addict, but she was an addict. Like, she died from a drug overdose. She was addicted to heroin. She was an amazing person, but she had so much trauma that she wasn't able to heal from. And I wish to God that she was alive now and that I was able to help her the way that I've helped myself, because she just was such a beautiful person. She was such a beautiful person. And it's my wish, my prayer, that through this course and through this program, I can help at least one person who is like my sister, or one person who is like me, who is lost. And who is lost and who is struggling, and to be able to help at least one of you, to help you to transform your life and to get out of that depression, to get out of those anxious, trapped thoughts, to be able to release your past, because it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to define you, and it doesn't have to keep you trapped forever, and you don't have to give power to people that hurt you anymore. You don't have to. And there is so much beauty in the world to see. There is so much that you can accomplish. And I know that you have dreams. I know that you do. I know that you can make them happen. And through this course, it's going to be an emotional ride, okay? I'm already crying, and this is the introductory video. It's gonna be an emotional journey, but I'm gonna work with you. And over these coming weeks, we are going to build something that is going to help you to change your life, to get rid of thinking traps, to get rid of those things that are holding you back, and to help to realize your true potential, to realize how powerful you are, how strong you are, how capable you are. And I'm going to walk you through all of that. So thank you for listening to my story now. I hope that you will want to reach out during this course as well to our Facebook community. So the group is called Wealthy Optimist Mindset. That is our coaching group. You can come in there. It is a community of like-minded people. We lift each other up. We encourage each other. As you go through these next 8 weeks in this program, I want to encourage you from today to get into that group, to help talk to other people. When people post their problems or people post things that they're working on, that you can actually communicate with them, learn from each other, become a mentor. The best way for you to practice what you're learning in this course is to help teach what you've learned to other people. And that's why I created that group. So go and add yourself into that Facebook group right now, Wealthy Optimist Mindset group. You'll have to answer a few questions to get into the group, but it's private. It's a safe place. Everything that's said in there is private. Nobody shares anything. So you're free to, open up. And it's an empowering place to be as well too. We're not going into this course and this program in a victim mentality mindset, because we're not victims, we're not survivors. We are empowered, incredible human beings who are capable of so much. And that is what I'm going to help teach you. That is what I'm going to bring into your life. I'm going to teach you everything from the law of abundance to releasing past trauma, and creating the connection between those two things, so you're able to link them and transform your life. Because if you can go from somebody who was, sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, had insane trauma and addiction problems like I did, to somebody that now is incredibly successful. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm successful now. And somebody that is able to help other people and to move across the world. I also went traveling for 5 months by myself, which is something when I was that other person, I never would have thought I would be able to do something like that, but I always wanted to, and I was able to use these 12 steps, change my mindset, because your mindset is everything. And I was able to go and friggin' launch pad my life off in a completely different direction, and to be able to just change the lives of many through changing my own life. And I want that for you, and that's what you're gonna learn. So go on to the next video where I'm gonna talk you through the 12 steps that we're gonna be learning, and then we will launch right into the program. So I'm really excited, and I cannot wait to talk to you in our Facebook community as well. And I will see you there.